Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan's army is forced out of its stronghold in Darfur by the RSF paramilitary. There's fierce worry for the fate of the 250,000 civilians who will be affected by the fall of El-Fasher, and it's one of the world's most brutal wars. Also, several are killed in crackdowns on protests in Cameroon in the run-up to Monday's confirmation that the world's oldest president has been re-elected for an 8th term. Paul Biya's opponents call the October 12th vote a masquerade. And it looks like Ivory Coast's president also held on to his job. Provisional results from the weekend's election suggest that, as expected, President Alassane Ouattara has won a 4th term. But first, Sudan's army chief says that soldiers have pulled out of the capital of North Darfur. There is deep concern that 250,000 civilians trapped in El-Fasher for over a year will suffer an even greater escalation of violence in the fall of the city to the RSF. Now, the paramilitary fighters have been locked in a brutal war with the army since 2023, and El-Fasher was the last stronghold in the region not yet under its control. The RSF forces seized a key military base from the army on Sunday, and military chief El-Fasher has already acknowledged reports of civilian abuses in the city itself.
We've agreed to withdraw the army from El-Fasher to a safer location to spare the citizens and the rest of the city from destruction. We are determined to take revenge for all of our martyrs, for what happened to our people in El-Fasher, the crimes that are being committed there and that were committed before that in all parts of Sudan, in full view of the world.
Well, Sudan's conflict has already created the world's biggest humanitarian crisis, and both the army and the RSF have, over the course of the years since 2023, been accused of brutal treatment of the Sudanese civilians caught in the middle of the fighting. However, El-Fasher's fall could still be a crucial milestone in the conflict. Naba Mohideen brings us more from Sudan.
Since RSF controlled El-Fasher city, or part of El-Fasher city, starting with the military brigade on Sunday morning, many videos were posted by the militia and the militants of the RSF showing no mercy in killing civilians, hundreds or we can say thousands of civilians, including women, elderly people, and even children in the capital of North Darfur, in El-Fasher. The people were fleeing the violence. Innocent people and unarmed civilians were killed in the roads, and they were killed in their way to flee the violence in El-Fasher. This was expected, Georgia, since the RSF has been besieging the city of El-Fasher for 17 months and using starvation as a weapon, and were bombarding mosques, neighborhoods, markets, and public places, including hospitals. So it was expected that genocides and war crimes will be committed the time or the minute that the RSF will control El-Fasher city. But what it is not expected is the silence of the international community, or we can say the slow response. We saw many condemnation by people and by movements saying that the international community has not pushed enough on the RSF to end the siege of El-Fasher city, and now, amid the atrocities and lack of information and also the absence of communications, there is fears of ethnic-driven killings, and the war there can morph into a civil war. It's really sad to see another war in Darfur that started in 2003 and not stopped at the April's war. Now the capital of North Darfur, El-Fasher, is a new stage of the Sudanese war. Of course, it has a moral importance for the RSF, and it has strategic importance for the RSF and their supporters, as El-Fasher is close to the Libyan border, where mercenaries and weapons are sent to the RSF militia from their supporters there, and also mercenaries are using the Libyan borders and the fragile situation in Libya and Sudan to fuel the war in Sudan. El-Fasher also is close to northern state, so it will be important for RSF, and it's important in the context of the war. But it's really very early to predict whether El-Fasher will still be under the control of RSF or the Sudanese military will regain control of the city. But what is important right now is any way to protect the civilians innocent civilians, especially that Al-Fasher is the homeland for hundreds of thousands of people, IDPs who were there since 2003, and also the number has increased due to the April's war. The situation is beyond catastrophic and needs an urgent intervention by by international community to help those in need.
Naba Mohideen there reminding us of the dangers being faced by civilians in El-Fasher since the city has fallen to the RSF paramilitary. Well, at least 4 people have been killed in post-electoral unrest in Cameroon following October 12th voting that delivered an 8th term for the world's oldest president. On Monday, the Constitutional Court announced that 92-year-old Paul Biya would stay put after winning 53.7% of the vote. Runner-up Issa Chiroma, though, says that he won and that the vote was rigged. His supporters have been protesting since last week. Indira Ayuk gets us up to speed.
Hours after he was declared winner of highly disputed presidential elections, Paul Biya has thanked those who he said once again placed their trust in him. In a release on social media, he expressed regret over the unrest, which have already claimed about 6 lives since Sunday. Protests erupted in several towns across the country when opposition supporters demanded credible results. In Yaoundé, Douala, Bafoussam and Garoua, followers of opposition candidate Issa Chioma Bakari took to the streets after partial results suggested he was on course to win the October 12 vote. Now, while the protesters chanted the name of their candidates carrying placards and banners, they were intercepted by security forces who used tear gas to disperse the crowds. Things escalated and live bullets were fired at the protesters. In the city of Douala in particular, streets were largely deserted in the capital Yaoundé prior to the proclamation of the results, and most businesses remained closed. Anti-riot police deployed across the city are still present, ready to disperse any more disgruntled crowds.
Indira Ayuk there. Meanwhile, it looks like Ivory Coast incumbent has also held on to his top job. Provisional results from the weekend's vote suggest that, as expected, President Alassane Ouattara has won a 4th term by a landslide. Not really a surprise, as his strongest opponents had been deemed to be ineligible in the race. Justice Baidu tells us more.
Mr. Alassane Ouattara secured a total of 3.759 million and 30 votes, representing approximately 89.77% of the total valid vote cast, leaving the 4 other contenders who stood in this election with under 15% of the vote cast. Voter turnout was around 50% across the country. It was really high to the north of the country where Mr. Ouattara hails from. He secured, there was around 99% voter turnout in Kong, for example, which is his hometown. The contrast was the case to the south and to the west of the country, where opposition parties draw their support base. In places like Abidjan, for example, there were polling stations that recorded around 19% voter turnout. It's been relatively quiet in places like Abidjan, not much of celebrations. Life is slowly returning to normal as many shops were closed over the weekend for the election. The Constitutional Council would have, over the next 5 days, opening itself up to any opposition that anybody may have in petitions against the numbers as announced by the Electoral Commission. It would then spend another 7 days to validate the numbers and go on to confirm President Alassane Ouattara as the new president-elect for Ivory Coast.
Well, the household help sector in South Africa is in a mess. Domestic work is a lifeline to many, but an estimated 400,000 jobs have disappeared in the field over the last 5 years amidst an economic slowdown. Those who are laid off are often unaware of their rights and where they can find help for themselves. Tom Canetti met up with one woman in Cape Town trying to come to terms with having been dropped by her employers.
Nikiwe is a single mother of 3 children. The only breadwinner in her small Kailicha home, she relied on her job as a domestic worker. So when she was let go in April, she lost everything.
Now I just go to the loan shark, to the loans. I don't know. I just go to the loans. But now, as a result, there's no one now who's willing to give me the money because I don't know if where I'm going to pay it. I'm struggling a lot, a lot. Like sometimes I feel like crying. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what must I do even about my life, but I'm thinking about my kids.
Domestic workers are often paid in cash without job security. The Domestic Workers Union in Cape Town educates workers of their rights and has offered Nikiwe help at a time when the entire industry is suffering.
How are you? I'm good, thank you, and you? I'm fine, thank you. Okay.
The union learns that Nikiwe's employer didn't register her as a worker.
I'm struggling. It's bad even at home. Sometimes we can sleep without food, just drinking water.
If you are retrenched by the employer, you need to have a retrenchment package where you get your severance pay, your notice, and your holiday money.
A recent poll by an online platform found that 400,000 domestic workers lost their job during the last 5 years, caused by South Africa's stagnant economy and the increase of remote working post-COVID.
Domestic work is a very elastic product, so when households are under pressure, that's one of the first areas that they cut. So it's a form of the economic conditions and consumer pressure, and then coupled with that, post-COVID, a lot of families have the option to work from home. There's hybrid work policies. So instead of getting a domestic worker in to do the laundry while you're at work, now people are putting like a bundle of laundry in while they work.
The survey found that 82% of domestic workers are the main breadwinners of their homes, and 40% of them are paid under the minimum wage.
That report by Tom Canetti. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us, though. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.